the biggest pressure for me was wanting to ask her, but not wanting to put pressure on her. She is my boss. She's all of our bosses. She's the head of the armed forces, and it seemed appropriate 4 years after her helicopter exit at the Olympics that it was the right timing. And if you've got the ability to be able to ask the Queen to up one on the Americans, then why not? But what I had to explain to her was the previous challenge that I'd given to the First Lady when I was in Washington. So that was where the whole thing started. She asked whether we were going to bring it. I said yes. Were they going to bring it? And then she ended up dragging the president in on something that was quite personal between the two of us. And there was no way that I was going to come to America 15 love down to the Americans. So naturally, I was going to drag the Queen into it and say, you know, do you want to be part of this? And she was more than happy to oblige. And I hope that everybody enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed it, and I know she did as well.
The mistress of the Raya side, but also highly competitive internationally.
Yes, of course, highly competitive. But for those people who are asking what was that all about, there was no one else that I can think of that was going to top the President and the First Lady of the United States of America. So it was an easy thing for me to sit there and go, right, well, this has to be the Queen, otherwise we lose. Simple as that.
Well, let's talk about the Invictus Games, because this originated in a momentary light bulb moment you had, as it were, in a plane coming back from Afghanistan during your first tour. And I think you were feeling a bit down at the time.
I was, that's right. I was feeling very down. I think the best way to explain it to people is, you know, I was an officer. I'd been training for 3 years, training with a select group of guys. We were a tight-knit team. I'd already been told I wasn't allowed to go to Iraq, but I was allowed to go to Afghanistan. Let's not get into that. But you know, the training had been done. We gelled together, and I was out there with the guys. And to be taken away from your team, not knowing what was going to happen to them and whether you were going to be indirectly responsible was a huge thing. It was something that I had to swallow. You know, once on that plane heading back with 3 wounded British soldiers who were wrapped up in plastic with tubes coming out of their mouth and out of their arms, all in induced comas. One of the guys had a test tube filled with shrapnel that had been removed from his head that he was clutching while asleep. And you know, I just spent a few minutes there just sitting with them and unable to speak to them, obviously. But that was a real turning point in my life. You know, not being Captain Wales, but being Prince Harry at the time, I was thinking there needs to be something here. And it was only 2012, after hearing about the Warrior Games, being able to see it and doing my second tour, that I actually realised sport plays a huge part in the rehabilitation of so many people. This surely is a magical thing.